The story begins with a king who is classified as the most powerful king on earth fighting a deadly war against an invader. But he soon died after the leader of the invaders planted his sword in his body to find himself floating in another world. Then he heard the voice of an unknown bird telling him to look for the light in his new life. After that, the king woke up to find himself in the body of a baby boy named Arthur, and his parents caressed him. And he realized that he would start a new life from scratch without being able to control the functions of his body. And his father told him that his name is Reynold, while his mother's name is Alice. Arthur felt sorry for himself to end up as a helpless child after he was the strongest king and won all the battles he fought before his death. Although he was relieved that his parents took good care of him and tried to ignore his feeling of fear because he was always put in embarrassing situations in front of them because of being a child, which made him feel that his body was like a prison. Afterward, Arthur watches his father practice using his special magical power that helps him strengthen his body, and when he is hit by a small rock, Alice uses her healing magic while Arthur feels strange as this seems like an unfamiliar power to him, but at the same time he finds it interesting. Over time, Arthur decided that he had to gain strength as soon as possible after realizing that people in this world are allowed to own weapons of all kinds. And when his father Reynold returned from a quick mission, Alice decided to take him for a nap, and Arthur felt angry that he could not complain. But even so, he saw that this life was not bad, as he was not used to sleeping safely in his previous life because of the many enemies. After a few months, Arthur began to crawl and his parents were happy that he had grown a little, while Arthur was surprised to see his miserable face in the reflection of the mirror for the first time, and he still hadn't gotten used to his new name despite the time he had spent with his parents until now. One day, Alice put him in his bed to go to sleep, and after she left, Arthur sneaked into the study without attracting attention. And because knowledge is a weapon, Arthur decided to use his childhood to read and learn more about the world so that he can gain strength. While reading a history book, he found that he is currently in the kingdom of Sabine, and his country is surrounded by the kingdoms of Darth, which belongs to the dwarves, and the Lenoir, which is inhabited by the elves. Then he realized that the monarchy in this country is inherited by the royal family and is not taken away. Over time, Arthur realized that this world is still evolving and found a book that explained why their technology is relatively primitive. And the reason is due to the magic that is created through Mon, which is present in the body of 1 in 100 people in this world, and most mages draw their power from early puberty to late adolescence. Arthur tried to activate his magical power based on the knowledge he had gained from the book as well as knowledge from a previous life about a concept similar to magic but related to human physical energy. As he was about to activate his Mon, Alice caught him and gently scolded him for disturbing her.
Come on now, dog. Come on, man.
As she continued to stare at him, Arthur became confused, thinking that she had noticed his attempt to use magic. But it turned out that she realized that he had defecated on himself while reading the books. 2 years after Arthur's birth, Alice was writing in her diary, admiring how funny he was, but puzzled that she'd never seen him smile. She was soon surprised to see him practicing fencing with his father in the courtyard. She headed outside, angry at Reynold, who had started teaching him to use a sword when he had just learned to walk. And as she scolded him, Arthur realized that through their 2-year relationship, the world was basically ruled by women. Afterward, Alice took him to the mall and went shopping. Arthur felt that coming here had provided him with valuable information in understanding this world and its weapons and materials. Although he felt uncomfortable with his life as an infant, he felt good about his parents' treatment of him, having been orphaned in a previous life and spent his childhood in an orphanage, and wondered if families were always like that. Alice saw that he had inherited Reynold's curiosity and reading and expected that he would one day want to run away and explore the world as his father had done. But she preferred that he chose to live a quiet life. The next day, Arthur watched his father train and thought he was lucky to have someone he could learn how to use magic from. When his mother picked him up to take him to bed, he mentioned that he wanted to read some books. Alice refused at first, telling him it was nap time. But when he stared at her with his innocent, childlike gaze, she couldn't resist and told him she would only let him read for a short time. After she left, Arthur tried to unleash the magical power within him. While his parents were outside, a loud explosion hit the house. Reynold jumped on top of Alice to protect her and his back was burned. Then they remembered that they had left Arthur inside and rushed to check on him. They were shocked to see him flying through the air after he managed to activate his magical energy even though he was not even 3 years old. After that, Arthur stood in front of them as if declaring his victory after spending 2 years of his life studying and learning. Suddenly, the ceiling almost collapsed on his head and his parents jumped towards him and Alice used healing magic to protect him while Reynold strengthened his body to destroy the ceiling before it reached them. Arthur realized that they would make sure he was safe at all costs after he was about to die again. And the 3 of them ended up crying in each other's embrace and ended up crying in each other's arms. Arthur remembered in his previous life when someone tried to assassinate him and was caught. and then he was sentenced to return home with his wife and son to await another death sentence. The man begged Arthur to spare his wife and son and told him that returning home was worse than death. But Arthur decided to carry out the sentence before his eyes and caused the death of his wife and son with a single swing of his sword. In the present, Reynold gave Arthur new gloves to become like him in the use of magic, but Arthur refused to take them and preferred the wooden sword because the weapon does not fit his current body. Then they started practicing sparring together, and Arthur succeeded in beating his father and smashing his sword amidst Reynold's amazement that he became stronger in a short time, which made him decide to bring him a suitable teacher for training. When Alice heard this, she refused and told him to continue to train him himself. He told her that he is very talented, so he wants to make him train with a real teacher to gain a lot of experience, and then pointed to his broken sword and told her that he could do it when he was only 4 years old. Although Alice is convinced that Reynold is right, she still refuses to let Arthur live in a city far away from her, and while they are still arguing about it, Arthur thinks that feelings can sometimes narrow one's horizons, so he suggests that they all move to another city, and then the argument stops and the parents are eager to pack their belongings and accompany him to the city. Arthur then met Adam and his friends. Adam thought he didn't remember him as they had met 2 years ago, but Arthur remembered who he was, as he had come to help his parents after he had caused their house to explode, as they were former members of his band. Adam, Angela, Durden, and Helen introduce themselves to him, and as they all interact with him, Arthur notices a girl standing quietly by herself, and Helen tells him that her name is Jasmine. Arthur remembers the transportation in his previous life, which was more like a space rocket than a vehicle like the one he's riding in. But it's not so bad. Then they all decided to take a break for a while to eat, and while they were sitting together they were surprised by the appearance of a group of wolves to attack them. But Arthur and his companions managed to get rid of them effortlessly, and Arthur admired the movement and fighting power of Adam's squad and wanted to become like them soon. Alice notices Reynolds' injured arm and decides to heal it while everyone else watches the surrounding area for any attacks. Arthur thinks that his mother might become a target because healing witches like her are rare, which is one of the reasons why she chose to live with Reynold in the countryside. Arthur is surprised when Adam asks Reynold to borrow it for a while to practice before going to bed and ends up confronting him with a wooden sword while Adam uses his usual spear. Arthur realizes that he has no intention of going easy on him and decides to attack him. To everyone's surprise, he uses 2 types of magic at once, but Adam manages to block him and exchange blows with him. Suddenly, Arthur is blown away by a blow from Adam and almost gets hurt, but Angela intervenes and helps him land safely with wind magic. Then everyone scolded Adam for continuing to train while Jasmine was curious to know how Arthur was able to use 2 types of magic together. The next day, everyone continued their journey and Arthur continued to train with everyone and learn new things while Jasmine watched him in silence. A few days later, Jasmine expressed her gratitude to him for teaching her a lot during their trip and gave him a gift for his birthday, and Arthur realized that he had won her admiration. And before they continued their journey, he noticed that his mother was not feeling well, but she pretended otherwise in front of him. During their journey, they are surprised by bandits who appear out of nowhere and start attacking them. Then the leader appears, intending to take the women and children with him to sell them as slaves, and Arthur realizes that they are completely surrounded. Arthur and Alice stayed inside the carriage, and as time went on, everyone began to feel tired due to the large number of bandits, and Reynold was badly damaged, but he decided to keep fighting and prevent Alice from using her power to heal him so that he wouldn't reveal her to them. Reynold tells Arthur to take her and run away. Arthur tells him that he can fight with them, but Reynold asks him to use his power to protect his pregnant mother. Arthur is surprised and realizes why Alice has been so tired throughout the journey. Arthur decided to comply with his request, took his mother and fled immediately while Reynold bought them time by confronting the bandit leader face to face, and then helped the rest of them escape without being attacked while Arthur thought about how he ended up running away for fear of losing something while causing the death of a family in front of their father's eyes. On their way, they were attacked by a thief. Arthur decided to sacrifice himself and pushed Alice away so that he could take the full damage alone. He then used the knife that Jasmine gave him when he realized that he was about to fall off the edge of the mountain and managed to pull the thief with him using the rope on the handle of the knife. As he falls, Arthur realizes that it feels good to save his mother even though he didn't gain anything, and understands what the man in his past life was asking of him when he wanted to save his family at all costs. And that sacrificing yourself to save your family makes you shed tears because you will never see them again like he did, and Arthur feels that he will die before he becomes a big brother. Arthur ended up standing in front of a giant black monster inside a cave, and was shocked by the fact that he already knew its name. When he tried to attack it, the monster easily blocked him and pushed him away, then told him that he still had a lot to learn. Then told him that he was an ally and gave him some food so that he could keep moving, and told him to consider himself lucky to be alive. Arthur began to eat greedily and then asked the monster if he knew where his parents were. The monster replied that he can't leave this place, but he has the ability to see far. Then he saw through the monster's power what happened in the area where they were attacked and found that the bandits were all dead, and the monster told him that his family had continued their journey for days. Arthur was relieved that they were all alive and began to cry out of happiness, and when he wondered about his identity, it turned out that the monster was a female named Sylvia, and Arthur spent a few days with her in that mysterious place, doing nothing but eating until his injuries healed. Although he could not return to the rest because he is in a place full of wild animals and bandits and will be in danger if he thinks of going out, Arthur decides to start training so that he can return to his parents. Over time, he notices that Sylvia doesn't talk about herself, and despite her terrifying appearance, she is kind, and while he is training to use magic, Sylvia is surprised that he has mana at this age. He was surprised to see her collecting her own mana while using magic at the same time. She told him that it was very easy for mana monsters like her and offered to train him in the technique. When Arthur is eager to learn more, Sylvia tells him that he will become stronger and asks him what he plans to do with the knowledge once he has it. Arthur replies that he will eliminate anyone who tries to take away his family, but he ends up flying away after Sylvia snaps her fingers in his face and tells him that she would never teach someone with such an expression on her face. Arthur is surprised that she resents the idea of him eliminating his enemies. She tells him that she can easily tear him apart with her hands, and at the same time she is able to touch him gently and make him feel safe, which means that violence is a product of anger and hatred inside him, and asks him not to waste the life she saved on something like that. To Arthur's surprise, she seems to know everything about him somehow. When she asks again, he tells her that he wants to protect his family and friends, and Sylvia decides to start teaching him her power. Arthur remembered that in his previous life he was only a king in name only because all the power was in the hands of the parliament, and he only had a role in waging wars, and while the speaker was praising him, Arthur decided to give it all up and leave. After that, he began to learn his new technique and remembered that all he wanted in his previous life was to be able to control his physical energy so that he could continue to win against his enemies. After he succeeded in learning the new technique, Sylvia pushed him away. He ended up behind a rock and found her telling him not to make any noise. Arthur saw a monster similar to Sylvia standing in front of her, but with an evil aura, and attacked her when she refused to accompany him. Sylvia unleashed her power and transformed into a white dragon and began a thunderous attack on the monster. Although she realized that using so much power could cost her her life, she didn't care and continued to attack it. While they were fighting, Sylvia realized that Arthur's life was in danger and decided to help him get away. Using her ability to stop time, she told him that she had taught him enough to survive on his own, and then opened a breach to get him to the nearest exit. Sylvia decided to give him a gift before he left. She gave him an egg and a feather and told him to take care of it. Arthur found drawings on his arm, and Sylvia told him that he would know what they were when the time came. She confessed that she could have sent him home immediately, but she enjoyed spending time with him, and Arthur felt ashamed that he couldn't protect him even though he was getting stronger, and wondered if the time he spent with her had changed him. He tells Sylvia that he considers her his family, no matter what she is, and wants to protect her as he promised. She tells him that he has 2 parents, and Arthur decides to call her his grandmother, which causes her to start crying because she can't live with him any longer. Sylvia ends up falling to the ground after being hit by the monster's thunderous attack, but she decides to take him with her to her death, and attacks him one last time, causing a huge explosion that spreads beyond the forest. Meanwhile, Arthur is traveling through the portal when he hears Sylvia asking him if he still remembers what she taught him. He tells her that he feels sad, and she tells him that he should turn sadness into happiness since the world is always full of sadness, and finally asks him not to let anger and hatred fill his heart. Arthur was surprised that Sylvia knew about his past life and that he was the most powerful king, which made him suspect that she was the one who brought him to this world. And after he was alone in the forest, he decided to fulfill the promise he made with her and use his strength to survive until he returns to his family. Arthur hears screams nearby and climbs to a higher elevation to see what's going on, and finds that a carriage is being attacked by bandits who have captured an elf girl and plan to sell her. Arthur remembers what the bandits were planning to do to him and his mother and starts to feel angry. But he quickly remembers Sylvia's words and decides not to let his negative emotions get the best of him and decides to follow them to the nearest human settlement. Then he thought that he should wait until the right time to save the girl and spent the whole time sitting on a tree branch. In the evening, he was surprised when he noticed that the wolves were obedient to the bandits and soon realized that it was some kind of magic after seeing the collars around their necks. He decided to take advantage of this and threw a bunch of rocks at them to force them to howl, and succeeded in luring the bandits and eliminating them one by one. And when he was facing the last one, the criminal decided to force him to accompany him, as he saw that he could make more money from him than he would make from the elf.
No, he's got a point.
The thief attacks him, but Arthur easily avoids him. When he thinks to attack him from a distance, the thief grabs his knife and reverses the attack. He ends up receiving a thunderous kick and falls to the ground. The thief then holds him down and thinks he has won. Arthur uses fire magic to burn his leg. After he manages to evade him, the thief is furious and decides to get rid of him and sell his body. But he ends up dead after Arthur sticks his knife in the center of his head. Then he approached the last thief and found him begging for his life, but Arthur didn't care about him. After he got rid of everyone, he went to the girl and freed her, but when he looked at her, he felt that something was wrong. After they got out of the carriage, the girl noticed that he was injured, and he realized that it seemed alarming for a normal child like her, and he thought that this was the first time he had met someone his age, and when she asked him what happened to the bandits, he just told her that they had had an accident.
Cap.
When he was about to leave, he found her clinging to his hand and begging him not to leave her alone. He told her that he had to go back to his family and that she would be safe because the forest was her home. But she told him that she was afraid of being eaten by tree monsters. Arthur decides to help her get back home. When he asks her if she knows how far she traveled after she was kidnapped, she tells him that she was chasing some bugs but got lost and doesn't know how to get home. Arthur remembered his previous life when he ended up in the shelter, and decided not to leave her alone in the woods. When he thought about riding the wolves, he found that he didn't know how to control them, and the elf decided to set them free and let them go. Arthur was worried that the wolves would attack them after freeing her from the magic of the bandits, but they ended up leaving quietly. Arthur decided to take her home and they spent time traveling together, as he tells her that she needs to eat so that she can continue her journey with him. He is surprised to realize that he speaks like Sylvia. When she asks him what he was doing in the forest, he tells her that he was separated from his family. He then asked about the situation in the kingdom of Elenoir, and she told him that it was an interesting place, and that she spent most of her time with her grandfather and her caretakers because her parents were always busy. As they continued on their way to the kingdom, Arthur felt that the journey was taking longer than expected. On the way, Tesha told him that she was going to train at her master's house after she activated her mana. Arthur sensed a suspicious movement behind him. It was one of the wolves watching them closely. At night, they began to hear a howling sound, and Arthur thought that he should have gotten rid of it as soon as he saw it. Then he asked Tesha to sit inside the tent while he took care of the wolf. When he was alone, he sat thinking about what Sylvia had given him. Then he found Tesha poking her head out of the tent to ask if it was okay for him to stay outside and let the monsters see that he was just a kid. Arthur realized that she was trying to convince him to go inside the tent because she was afraid to sleep alone. So he went inside the tent and sat down next to her. She told him that she had heard her grandfather tell her about humans and that males are perverted and prefer to take more than one wife.
Cap.
As he talked to her, he noticed that she had fallen asleep and realized what it was like to have a younger sister. As time went on, he noticed that she became more comfortable around him and was relieved that she had forgotten what had happened to her. Tesha went to find herbs to help him feel better, so he had no choice but to sit and wait for her. He soon realized he was in trouble when he found the wolf approaching him and he couldn't move. Tesha came back and he told her to run away immediately, but the wolf put a wild boar he had caught in front of him and left quietly. And Tesha told him that he was returning the favor because they had treated him well. Tesha gave him some mushrooms she had found along the way. And when it was time to go to sleep, she told him that she had heard stories about the human and dwarf kingdoms, but that the people of Elenoir did not trust the other countries because there were some bad people among them. The next day they continued their journey together, and he found her asking him to call him by his first name as friends since they had spent a long time together. And then he remembered that he used to make enemies only in his previous life. Then Tesha told him that she found something on her way. And when he took a look, he was surprised to see a large tree emitting a bright light, and he found her extending her hand to him to accompany her inside. Arthur ends up being arrested by the elf army, who decide to get rid of him as an outsider, but Tesha intervenes and tells them to let him go because he saved her, but they insist on framing him and that he pretended to help her to brainwash her. Then an old man intervened and ordered them to release him. Arthur realized that he was Tesha's grandfather, who introduced himself as Furion and told him that he was the former ruler of the kingdom and expressed his gratitude to him for helping his granddaughter. And Arthur was shocked to learn that Tesha was a princess and not just an ordinary elf. After that, he saw her parents arrive in the kingdom after learning that she was lost, and she ran towards them crying to tell them that she missed them. And Arthur realized that her parents were the king and queen of Elenoir, and when her father ordered the guards to arrest him, Furion told him that he was the one who saved his daughter, and Tesha asked them not to mistreat him. Her father was surprised when she decided to host Arthur in their castle, while Tesha got excited and approached him to tell him that she would share all her favorite meals with him, and her father was forced to agree to allow a human to enter his castle, while Arthur marveled that he sensed a mysterious power emanating from Furion. Tesha then took him on a tour of the kingdom, and on the way, Everyone was staring at him, not accepting his presence among them because of their bad impression of humans, which made him not realize that he had the opportunity to see such a civilization with his own eyes. Then he felt the pain in his core again as he walked. He couldn't figure out why yet, but he thought that he shouldn't let his defense down while he was in the kingdom. After a while, they reached the castle and Tesha told the servants that she wanted to honor Arthur as a guest and that he wasn't as bad a human as they thought he was. As she began to think about what to do first, he told her that he wanted to talk about his coming here. Her parents agreed to have a conversation with him, and Arthur ended up sitting at the table with them. And Tesha's father told him that his name was Aldwin, the current king of Elenoir, and his wife, Queen Muriel. Arthur knelt in front of him and introduced himself. He told him that he grew up in a humble town in Sabine Kingdom and that he was not in a position to meet such a king. He expressed his gratitude that he had the opportunity to meet him and thought that he should not allow them to treat him like a child in order for the discussion to be useful. He began to tell them about what had happened to him and how he had been separated from his family, but did not mention his meeting with Sylvia. When he began to talk about his meeting with Tesha, he noticed that the atmosphere in the room had changed, and Aldwin was furious to learn that the bandits were planning to sell her to the slave traders, and he asked Firion if he should not be allowed to treat her as a child for the sake of discussion. When Firion asked him if he had begged the bandits or tried to negotiate with them to leave Tesha alone, he told him that he was a wizard, even though he was a child, and had used the force to save her and had succeeded in overcoming them on his own. The guards didn't believe him and wondered what a child like him could do. One of them accused him of tricking Tesha so he could sneak in here. She told him that Arthur doesn't lie and that she was indeed kidnapped by some bad guys. Aldwin decides to believe him, so Arthur asks him to help him get back to his family in exchange for his daughter. And Aldwin is surprised that he dares to ask, knowing the animosity they have toward his kind. Arthur told him that this is the reason why he decided to ask him, as he believes that the elves are peaceful beings since they accuse humans of brutality, and Aldwin remained silent after Arthur was able to give a logical reason for his request. Aldwin is forced to agree to his request, but the real issue is that the gate to the Sabine Kingdom won't open for 5 years, so he decides to have some of his soldiers take him home tomorrow. The pain returned to Arthur and he found that it was getting worse inside his body, and he wished that Sylvia was with him now to help him with what had happened to him. After he finished taking a shower, he went outside to get some air and felt the evening breeze relieve his pain. Then he thought that he had to find out why he was in such pain, and that's when he spotted Tesha standing on the opposite balcony with her parents, which made him wonder how his parents were doing and hope that they had managed to escape safely. Then he began to think about how they would react if they were reunited, as the thought of someone smiling at him and welcoming him back would have been unthinkable in his previous lonely life. Meanwhile, Tesha noticed him staring at them and went straight to him to apologize for her parents being rude to him at first. He told her he wasn't offended, that they had a right to be worried about her, and when she said she was sure his parents would want to check on him as soon as they saw him, he wondered if they would really be happy to see him again since they had gotten into so much trouble because of him and he couldn't protect them in the end. Tesha clapped him on the face to shake him out of his negative thoughts and told him that his parents were sad that they couldn't see him and expressed her sadness that he was leaving tomorrow. While they were talking, several fireflies appeared around them, making Arthur see the reflection of his parents. He wondered what he was fighting for. He remembered Tesha's expression when her guards caught him and couldn't explain what it meant. He felt selfish when he thought that she had betrayed him and lured him to her country to get rid of him because he was still fighting his old life with all its bad things. While they were contemplating the fireflies, they were surprised by a surprise attack. Arthur rushed towards the source of the attack, which turned out to be Firion. Arthur was surprised that he had just tried to attack them, and told him that it wasn't a real attack, but he wanted to make sure that he was really a slave trader killer, which he proved by responding immediately to the attack. Tesha was furious and told him to stop harassing him since he wasn't the kind of person he hated. He told her that he didn't come here to annoy him, but because he hadn't had someone this interesting in a long time. Then he summoned a sword and gave it to Arthur and pushed her away, and challenged him to a face-to-face duel. Arthur did not hesitate to attack him with the sword, and then he realized how strong and fast Firion was, and they continued to exchange blows, and Arthur tried to increase his speed with everything he had. But Firion ended up shattering the sword. The shattered blade almost pierced Tesha's body, but Arthur threw the sword at him to knock him down before he could reach her. Then he used his magical powers to face Firion, and as he approached him, he remembered the look in the eyes of the monsters he had seen on the battlefields in the past, and he succeeded in hitting Firion with a blow in the center of his head. Firion admires him and wants to continue the fight with him in the second round, but Tesha grabs his ass to force him to stop bothering him. While Arthur tells him that he is honored to get a compliment from him, and Firion tells him that he will become his student if he really means what he says. Arthur is surprised by his offer and tells him that his parents still don't know that he's alive. Firion assumes that there's a way to tell his parents that he's still alive. Arthur can't refuse, and suddenly the pain in his chest returns with more intensity. Firion realizes that he has inherited the will of the monsters and approaches him and tells him that he will die if he refuses to become his disciple. Arthur feels so heavy in his chest that he can't stand his heartbeat. Suddenly, something strange appears outside of him and he sees a huge dark monster approaching him. Arthur realizes that he is dreaming and that the monster represents his anxiety, or the weight of his responsibilities. Then he woke up to Tesha's voice telling him that her grandfather was waiting for him, so he had to change his clothes to meet him, and when she asked him if he really wanted to stay, he told her that he would make his decision after returning from the trip. Then they went out to meet Firion together and found her parents begging him not to get involved with him as he did not belong to them, and told him that it was against the customs to let him stay on their land. Tesha approached them and told them that Arthur had saved her life. Firion invited them to get into the carriage to begin their journey. On the way, Arthur wondered when they would arrive at their destination, and Firion noticed that he seemed sluggish. Tesha fell asleep on his shoulder, and Firion told him that she woke up unusually early because she wanted to know what was going to happen to him, and told him that she had lived a lonely life because of her position as heir to the throne, and that she had been let down by false friends. Firion liked the idea that she smiled spontaneously when she was with him, which he hadn't seen in a long time, and thanked Arthur for making her smile again. And Arthur felt that he was someone he could trust. After a while, they arrived at Firion's friend's house and were soon surprised to see Arthur and Tesha when they saw him kicking the door to force his friend to open it. And when he delayed his answer, he approached the door to hear if there was a sound nearby, but without realizing, the door slammed in his face after his old girlfriend opened the door and called him a rude person. Firion introduced her to them and told them that her name is Reincarnated, and she is a witch with unique skills. Arthur realized that her spells do not belong to the 4 elements of magic like his mother, and when he entered her house, he found that she had hundreds of books and wondered how she would help him communicate with his parents. Reincarnated answered him that she is a fortune teller, and although she has special abilities, she cannot see anything in him, but she could see parts of his past and future. But he did not come here to hear a prophecy. Then she asked him to look at the bowl full of water in front of them and to imagine his parents and talk to them as soon as he saw them. And after she used her powers, he began to imagine them until their images became clear before him, and he imagined them eating dinner together and feeling sad about losing him on his birthday. Meanwhile, Reinald and Alice thought he had died because of them. Despite the success of their mission and their new home, it wasn't enough to overcome the grief of losing their son, and Reinald blamed himself for asking him to protect Alice and his brother. Suddenly, they heard Arthur's voice speaking to them somehow, and they couldn't believe it was real. But he told them that he was alive and well, and that he was in the elf kingdom of Elenoir, and using special magic to communicate with them. He then expressed his desire to return to them, but he can't do it right now because he needs treatment. He promised that he would return after he was fully recovered and asked them not to blame themselves for the accident because he would have made the same decision anyway. Reinald and Alice were overjoyed that he was still alive and able to communicate with them, while Arthur started crying because he missed them and wanted to go home as soon as possible and decided not to worry them like that ever again. Then told Firion that he agreed to become his student. Tesha then returned home and scolded Aldwin for wanting to expel Arthur from the kingdom, telling him that it would hurt their race in the eyes of the people. So he had to accept his presence among them when he saw that she was right, and told her that if he caused any trouble, he would not hesitate to expel him. Firion told him that he would personally supervise his education and take full responsibility. So Aldwin went and told Arthur that he was welcome in their land and apologized for his previous rudeness. Arthur was surprised by their sudden change in attitude towards him and then realized that Tesha and Firion were behind the change. Then Tesha asked her parents to let her take him around the kingdom, and they went out together to wander around. And Arthur marveled at her excessive enthusiasm and kept contemplating everything around him while Tesha ran, dragging him behind her. Arthur accidentally bumped into a passerby, and when he apologized, he found him expressing his disgust at him for being human, then realized who he was and told him that Firion liked him because humans had no place among them. And soon the children gathered around them and began to mock him and demand that he leave their land. Tesha suggested that they continue on and ignore them, but Arthur felt the urge to get rowdy and found the child approaching them and offered to accompany Tesha instead, telling her that his name was Ferret. When she refused, Arthur began to mess with him and infuriate him by saying his name wrong, and then left with Tesha after pretending to show respect for him and making him unable to respond. Before they left, Ferret decided to challenge him to a man-to-man duel for rehabilitation and warned him that if he backed down, it would reflect on the reputation of his mentor Firion, and Arthur found himself trapped in front of everyone waiting for his response. When Ferret found him silent, he decided to take him as agreeing to the fight and asked Tesha to judge them. Soon the fight started in front of everyone in the market, and Ferret rushed towards him to pounce on him, but he ended up falling to the ground after receiving a thunderous punch from Arthur. After Ferrith lost consciousness, Tessia pulled Arthur away, and when he saw her smile, he realized that he had fallen in love with her without realizing it, and they spent their time visiting different shops and trying many things together. At the end of the day, Tessia asked him if he was excited to start his training under Firion and noticed that something was wrong with him. While Arthur remembered what Firion had already told him, that he does not train the weak, as he will train him to tame monsters, which will make him face many challenges in his daily life. Firion told him that the more he endured, the more experience he would gain. Despite this, Arthur decided not to back down, and Firion told him not to worry about the pain he felt from time to time. Arthur had the confidence to tell Tessia that he was looking forward to training under her grandfather, since he had suffered so much to get to this point and had decided to make his own destiny. Tessia was excited and told him that she would do her best too. The next day, Arthur began his first training with Firion, and as the days went by, Arthur felt stronger and more mature, and realized that things would get harder the further he went. But he decided to focus on what he had to do for now, because he believed that his future in this world would be an interesting one.
Years later, Arthur and Tessia train together under Ferion's guidance using wooden swords, and Firion thinks they are strong enough to move on to the next stage of their training. After hours of hard training, Tessia fell exhausted while Arthur practiced using the 4 elements of magic with Firion, who told him that he would be able to use one of them depending on his race, as elves specialize in wind, water, and earth magic, while dwarves tend to use the elements of earth and fire. He then added that humans have mastered all 4 elements, but because of their individual compatibility, most of them can only use one element, with rare exceptions. Tessia wondered why Arthur couldn't use magic during physical training like her. Firion replied that the reason is due to a weakness within him, which is the will of a monster within his mana core that causes an imbalance between his body and the core, and is the cause of his constant pain. First, to train him to harmonize the core with his body, Arthur thought that maybe Sylvia is the will of the monster inside him, and that it was transferred to his core after her death, while Tessia thinks that he pretends to be in pain when he receives a blow from her. He told her that anyone would feel pain if she hit him, and remembered that she has exceptional strength after she succeeded in awakening her mana at the age of 9, and since then, she has been practicing with him. Firion then told him that it was time to work on awakening the beast's will within him, and if he succeeded, the pain he felt would disappear and he would become a monster tamer. Once he used his power and put his hand on Arthur's chest, he and Tessia ended up flying away after he awakened Sylvia's will within him, not realizing how powerful it was. After a while, Arthur regained consciousness and found Firion sitting next to his bed. When he asked him if he knew where his monster will came from, he told him that the will belonged to a dragon. Firion was shocked and asked him not to tell anyone, as this power would cause conflicts between everyone if they knew of its existence. Then Arthur was surprised when he told him that he would be leaving the kingdom 4 months from now, as the 3 kingdoms will hold a cultural exchange where the youth of each country will communicate with the other countries to acquire new cultures. Then he remembered seeing Tessia's family leave a few days ago to attend a meeting outside the kingdom. Firion marveled that he did not seem happy even though he had the opportunity to meet his family again, and asked him to get some rest in order to prepare for tomorrow's training. While Arthur was lying on his bed, he felt Sylvia's egg hatching until an eye appeared from it. Then it broke completely and a small black dragon emerged from it. Arthur picked it up and contemplated it for a while and found it cute and harmless, but he was soon surprised by a sudden bite while the dragon was pretending to be cute, and then found a mysterious mark showing where it had bitten him on his arm, and was surprised by his ability to telepathize with him and asked him to call him Dad. Then he decided to name him Sylvie after Sylvia, and when he took a look at the mark, he felt that it had significance and might benefit him in the future. Then he fell asleep next to his new friend, and in the middle of the night, Tessia felt worried, so she went to Arthur's room and was surprised to see Sylvie sleeping next to him. Tessia caused them to panic after they woke up to her screams, and Arthur found her holding Sylvie in her arms and admiring how cute he was. The next day, Sylvie kept sitting on top of him and worrying about Tessia. Afterward, they met Firion, who was shocked to learn that Arthur had gotten a pet, especially a dragon. When Arthur told him what had happened, he thought the egg had hatched after he had completely aligned himself with the will of the beast inside him. Arthur was worried that Sylvie's appearance would expose his powers, but Firion told him that no one would believe he had a dragon, and he could tell everyone that he was just a rare mana beast. He decided to make him go through the beast core and mana core strengthening training at the same time, since he had become a monster tamer. Arthur was surprised that he would have to fight Firion in order to perfect the training. What axa? Firion didn't hesitate to use his full strength, and although Arthur had never underestimated him before, he felt that Firion's strength was too much for him at the moment. When Firion began to move around him at breakneck speed, Arthur decided to retreat and surrender immediately. Firion reverted to his original form, and Arthur was so impressed by how fast he was moving that he couldn't even recognize his own presence, telling him that the Shadow Tiger's ability gave him an instinctive control over the winds around him. He summoned a wooden sword, gave it to him, and told him it was time to start the real training. As the days passed, Arthur succeeded in mastering the will of the beast. His core became painless, and his body became stronger and able to fight against Farion in his Shadow Tiger form. 4 months later, Arthur was wandering outside with Tessia when he bumped into Ferrith and couldn't recognize him, while the spoiled nobleman still remembered his humiliation that day and challenged him to a duel to make him remember him well. Then he ended up on the ground after being defeated again by Arthur, who approached him and told him with an infuriating smile that he was happy to meet him again. And when he extended his hand to him, Ferrith felt angry but agreed to shake his hand in the end, and his companions realized that he had wanted to be his friend from the beginning.
Are you serious?
When Arthur asks him if he plans to attend the cultural exchange between the 3 kingdoms, Ferrith tells him that he has been chosen this year to be a goodwill ambassador. Olko! Gok! While he was flattering himself, Arthur asks if Tessia plans to attend, and when Ferrith taunts her, she throws a punch at him to teach him a lesson in front of everyone. Arthur dragged her away and scolded her for beating someone who was a princess and asked her to consider her status. When he remembered that he had caused the death of a family in front of one of his subjects, he felt that he had no right to blame her. Tessia felt sad that he was going back to his family and she would be alone again. She blamed him for being angry with her, like her father, and told him before she left that he was like an old man. She sat sadly in her room until she was surprised to find him standing at her window and inviting her to accompany him to the forest. Tessia didn't mind going with him, but she was worried because they had been warned not to go into the forest alone. He told her that they would escape if they encountered kidnappers. Then they sat stargazing together near the forest, and Arthur noticed that she was sleepy but trying to stay awake. He asked her if she was still afraid of ghosts, but she told him that she was fine. Then she asked him if he could stay here and not leave, and while he was thinking about the answer, he found that she had fallen into a deep sleep. The next day, Arthur prepared to go to the rendezvous. Before he left, Farion gave him a compass to help him not get lost and told him he could use it whenever he wanted. When she stumbled, he approached her and helped her up. She told him to be sure to eat his food and not to hang around, so he felt grateful to her and hugged her to tell her that he would miss her very much after he left. When Arthur arrives at the place where his parents live, they can't believe they see him in front of them after so many years and that he has become a young man, and they start crying while hugging him.
That's what I'm talking about.
While his younger sister stands in a state of wonder at what is happening. When she asked Alice not to cry, Arthur realized that she was his sister and remembered that he almost lost his life to protect her when Alice was pregnant with her, so he approached her and told her his name. Then Alice called her Eleanor and told her that he was her older brother, which made her distraught. They took Arthur inside the house and asked him if he still felt sick as he had told them last time. He told them that he was fine, and while Eleanor was angry that he was getting all the attention from her parents, Alice told her to join them and tried to remind her to talk about Arthur every night before going to bed. Eleanor was surprised when Sylvie jumped towards her and grabbed him without fear. Then Arthur sat down to tell them all what he had been through since he was separated from them without mentioning his meeting with Sylvia, explaining that he survived the fall from the top of the hill as luck and that some of his magical powers were awakened unconsciously, and why he refused to tell them the whole truth because it could be dangerous for them. He then told them that the disease would not return because he could control his mana core after it was unstable, and when Reynold asked about Sylvie, he told him that he found him in a monster's nest while traveling and his mother was dying. Curious about his father's current job, Reynold told him that he works as a trainer for the security team of the Hestia auction house and that his mana is now orange, as it is common in this world for mana to start with the weakest color of black until it reaches the strongest level of white. Arthur realized that he had devoted his time to hard training since his absence, and when Reynold asked him what phase his mana had reached, he was shocked when he told him that he had reached the lightest shade of red, which meant that he was close to his father's level. Alice admired her son's strength while Reynold was excited to fight Arthur in the backyard. As Arthur contemplated his family, he had a wonderful feeling, and suddenly a mysterious person burst into the room after realizing he was still alive. Arthur guessed that this person and his family were friends of the family, but Reynold told him that his name was Vincent, the manager of the auction house where he worked. He went to introduce himself, and Vincent's wife told him that they had a daughter named Lilia and encouraged them to become friends. Lilia was standing in front of him with a poker face before she noticed Sylvie standing on his shoulder, and her eyes became hearts, and she did not hesitate to caress and play with him, while Reynold told Vincent that he came at the right time, as they almost caused a huge mess by having together. And Vincent was surprised by the idea, and at the same time excited to watch their fight. Afterward, they all headed to the backyard, and Arthur prepared to face his father for the first time in years. Vincent wondered if he was serious when he said that his nucleus was close to orange, and Alice told him that Arthur had always been a quick learner. Vincent marveled at how quickly he was gaining strength. 12-year-old geniuses who went to a prestigious university barely had cores that were dark red. When the fight started, they rushed at each other and started trading blows. When Arthur tried to land a big shot on Reynold, Reynold blocked it and told him he had to work harder. Then he was surprised by Arthur's sudden leap and attempted crushing kick. He continued to throw quick strikes strikes at him, making Reynold realize that he was becoming a force to be reckoned with. He then told him that it was time to get serious, and decided to use his firepower to strengthen his entire body. As they continued to fight, Arthur remembered that there was something in the past that worked like mana inside his body. Key, the life force. As he dodged his crazy father's deadly attacks, he kept thinking of a way to defeat him now that he was much stronger than before, and he could only unleash all the power he had managed to awaken and strengthen over the years. Everyone was shocked to see his terrifying aura, as if he was about to become a Super Saiyan, and Arthur did not hesitate to rush towards Reynold and kick his ass. But despite his super strength, Reynold was able to block him and return the favor, remembering that it was his memories of his previous life that helped him reap the benefits of his training under Farion. Arthur used advanced magic to ignite flames all around him, as everyone was stunned. While Reynold was surprised at the level his son had reached, he was even more amazed when he controlled the water from the fountain near them and surprised him with it. He forgot about the fight and went to hug Arthur, expressing his admiration for his strength and asking him when he learned all this. In the evening, they all sat down at the table, and Vincent pointed out that Arthur had a promising future ahead of him. Reynold told him that he had known this since he had awakened his powers at the age of 3. Reynold was surprised at the idea of his son attending the most prestigious academy on the continent, but his wife told him that he had the qualities that made them eager to invest in him and that they wouldn't mind paying his tuition. Alice was apprehensive about how the academy officials would react to the fact that he was only 8 years old. Vincent said he knew the headmistress well and could convince her. Arthur wanted to give his opinion since it was his business, and told Vincent that he was grateful for his concern, but he wanted to spend more time with his family he hadn't seen in a long time, and decided to go to his room to get some rest. On his way to his room, he was surprised to find Lilia following him and asking him to accompany her somewhere, and when he did, she took him to the servants' room to introduce him to them, and then sat down to eat some delicious food without the knowledge of her family, who cared about her weight in an exaggerated way. When Arthur wondered about it, one of the servants told him that she used to come here when she felt stressed because her parents put a lot of pressure on her because they wanted her to wake up, even though they were not magicians. At night, Arthur sat with his parents, who were very happy to have him back. When they noticed that he looked much different than last time, Alice told him that he was still the same kind, intelligent boy she had known before. Then Reynold told him that he had grown stronger and was ready to become the most powerful magician in the future. Before they left the room, Reynold wanted to know what Vincent had told him, and he told him that he knew he had no ill will. The next day, Arthur rushed downstairs and found the band of adventurers, his father's friends, had come to see him. He was surprised to find Angela hugging him so tightly that he almost choked, and noticed that everyone had grown since their last meeting. Adam was curious to know more about Sylvie, but the others didn't care, while Arthur felt that keeping his composure made him look like a bad person when he was supposed to be nostalgic for them. Jasmine approached him and apologized for the trouble she had caused him, and then they sat down to talk about what had happened since they had parted, and he found that they had visited many cities on the continent of Decathlon. Then he thought that he didn't know much about this continent or the Sabian kingdom, and that it might not be a bad thing to become an adventurer if it would help him discover more about this world. A few days later, Arthur was practicing his telekinetic training with his telekinetic powers, but he soon felt exhausted. Even though he was only using his powers for a few seconds, it felt like hours. Despite his fatigue, he decides not to give up and continue practicing until he masters his new skill so that he can protect those he loves. His thoughts are interrupted when Sylvie joins him, and when he sits down to pet him, he is surprised after smelling his stinky odor. Then he ended up cleaning him in the bathroom while Sylvie tried to wriggle away from him like a cat. He noticed that he couldn't stop himself from thinking about Lilia
Yeah, boy.
and what the servants had told him about her. After he finished cleaning Sylvie, he found his mother standing at the door of his room and telling him it was his turn to improve his appearance. Arthur ended up in the shop of an eccentric designer who described him as an uncut jewel and promised to make him shine like a star. Within minutes, Arthur returned to his family looking like a completely different person after getting a haircut and new clothes. Alice admired his new look, while Eleanor told him he was handsome. When he asked why they wanted to improve his appearance, Lilia's mother told him that she planned to take him to visit the auction house they ran, and because it was a prestigious place that attracted many celebrities, they didn't want him to make his first visit looking like a caveman. Then Eleanor approached him and asked him to accompany her, which made Lilia jealous because she was not accompanying her before his return. Arthur told her that he was interesting to her because he had just returned, and then they all went on a tour around the city and bought several things. While walking around, Arthur sensed a mysterious power around him, so he headed towards the source of the power and found a shop selling magical cores taken from mana monsters. He was surprised that the trade of cores is allowed, and Lilia's mother told him that the effects vary from one core to another, as there are some that cost up to 100 gold pieces. She adds that some of the cores will be sold at the next auction and lets him take a look at them when the time comes. Lilia thinks that maybe having a magical core will help awaken her power, but her mother tells her that it's not true, and she doesn't intend to buy something so expensive for a child. Over the course of the day, Arthur noticed Lilia's expression of frustration and despair and thought that maybe it wasn't her mother who was putting pressure on her, and that she wanted to live up to her father's expectations, and when he wanted to tell her something, he was surprised that she had already left. Lilia then goes to a gun store that sells magic cores cheaper than the core store and decides to buy one with the money she has, only to have Arthur stand behind behind her and tell her that having a core doesn't guarantee that she can use magic. Lilia insisted on trying. He asked her what would happen if she failed. She told him that she wouldn't be affected as she had tried everything before and it didn't work, and accused him of not understanding what she was going through because he was special and had many skills. Arthur realized that he was the reason why she was feeling stressed about it. When she wanted to leave, she pushed him away, but she accidentally bumped into one of the Magic Academy students, and although she apologized to him, he and his friends continued to make fun of her. When one of them was about to attack them, her mother immediately intervened and ordered them to stop messing with her daughter. The owner of the store came out and asked her not to disturb them so as not to affect the reputation of his store. She scolded him for siding with the students of the academy over the daughter of the Hestia family. They were surprised to hear the name, as the family is known to be one of the biggest donors to the academy, and the students had to withdraw before the news spread. In the evening, Arthur and the others returned home, and Vincent was surprised when his wife told him what had happened. He found Lilia slowly approaching him to apologize for causing trouble. He told her that such a small thing was nothing to worry about, and told Arthur that what had happened would not affect his joining the academy. Lilia realized that he wanted Arthur to join the academy instead of her after she failed to use magic, and she felt angry enough to tell Vincent and Arthur that she hated them and rushed to her room. After a while, Arthur went to her room to invite her to dinner with everyone, but she didn't answer, and that's when he noticed one of the servants standing nearby. On the other hand, Lilia remembered when she was young and her father promised her that he would make her go to the Magic Academy when she grew up, which made her excited. As the years passed, she began to worry about not awakening her power, and her mother reassured her that it was normal given her age, but now doubts and negative thoughts began to dominate her head, especially after Vincent decided that Arthur would enroll in the academy instead of her. Then her thoughts were interrupted by Arthur's voice calling her after one of the servants told him that she was in their room, and when she looked at him, he apologized to her and told her that her parents were worried about her, so she apologized to him because she felt jealous of him against her will after he suddenly appeared and took away her parents' attention from her. She then blamed herself for not waking up after so much time had passed and felt that her parents had given up on her. Arthur realized the feeling she was drowning in the darkness of self-blame and decided to comfort her and held her face to tell her that he realized that she was trying to make an effort to live up to her family's expectations, and he told her that when he broke up with her, she was trying to live up to her family's expectations. He then told her that when he was separated from his parents, he met a girl who lifted his spirits in the same way, and added that her parents already know she's trying hard, but her father is acting like Eleanor because he's still new to them. Lilia tells him that her father wants her to be a witch so that she could be happy, which is why he makes so many donations to the academy, but she ends up feeling too much pressure on her own, and Arthur realizes that the more her father helps her with magic, the worse things will get. Vincent was surprised when Arthur told him that she had left the house and that he had sent her to where he was training to help awaken her magical powers, and Vincent was furious that he had acted on his own without consulting the others. Arthur told him that he did so at her request because she would have been nervous if she chose to talk to them and the place he sent her to was safe. Then he gave him the letter she left for her parents and found that she had decided to leave after she felt she was a burden to them and vowed to become a witch at all costs and would return after achieving her goal. Vincent broke down when he realized that he had been a fool all this time after imposing on her the belief that her future would be promising after becoming a witch, when she doesn't need that because she will still be his daughter who he loves even if she is not a witch. Lilia entered the room after hearing what her father had said, and it turned out that Arthur had arranged all of this to prove to her that her parents loved her and would continue to love her no matter what. He then went on to apologize for worrying them about their daughter, knowing that losing a child causes pain worse than death, and feeling ashamed that he had caused his parents to feel that pain beforehand. Vincent admits that it was all his fault for being inconsiderate, and tells Reynold and Alice that he tried to send Arthur to the academy even though he had just returned home after years of absence, and apologizes to them for his rudeness. He then told Lilia that she didn't have to go to the academy and promised to make her a happy girl even if she didn't become a witch. She felt confident and expressed her desire to go to the Magic Academy and learn how to use magic because she wanted to become a witch and use her powers to serve others like Arthur. The parents felt proud of their daughter and told her that they were confident in her ability to do so. Arthur told them that he would be the one to awaken her powers, and then it occurred to him to involve Eleanor in an experiment with Lilia. He asked them to breathe deeply so that he could check their mana, and told them to close their eyes and keep breathing until a light appeared in the darkness. While Eleanor was able to see the light briefly, nothing appeared in front of Lilia, so he touched each of their backs and told them to keep breathing even if they felt some heat. Lilia began to see some faint lights, and Arthur confirmed that his theory was correct, and Lilia finally managed to awaken her powers. She then went with Arthur to celebrate her accomplishment with the servants. He told her that it would take 2 or 3 years for her powers to stabilize and that she would have to work hard during that time. Lilia was excited for a new challenge and was curious to see what magic item she would be able to use. Arthur went with his family and the others to attend Helsta's important auction and was amazed to see the auction house, which is like a castle. And when he went inside, he found the place crowded with people and felt that this was his chance to buy some valuable items that Vincent had collected. He then began to inspect the items around him and noticed that his father seemed to be serious when it came to work, as he was guarding the auction for the day. When the auction started, Vincent gave a special welcome to King Gladiar, which made Arthur feel nostalgic and remember his former life as a king. The first item in the auction is a sword made by a famous craftsman and priced at 50 gold pieces. Arthur sits thinking about the advantages and disadvantages of the sword while merchants compete with each other for it. When Alice asks him if he has seen anything he wants to buy, he tells her that there is nothing they can afford. Then he noticed Sylvie's sudden absence and decided to go looking for him around while Sylvie was standing near the theater, and trembled in fear when he saw a nobleman named Sebastian standing in front of him like a giant. Then a cub was displayed in a cage for auction, and one of King Gladiar's children wanted to get it as if he wanted to buy a doll. Meanwhile, Arthur was still looking for Sylvie until he heard his voice near him, and after Gladiar got the cub, he entrusted it to his son Curtis to take care of it. Sylvie was afraid of Sebastian, who was trying to lure him closer, but Arthur arrived just in time to realize that he was one of Gladiar's followers and decided to try to get out of the situation without causing a mess. Yes, he asked him to calmly return Sylvie to him as it is his pet and not one of the items in the auction, and Sebastian is surprised that he has a unique mana monster that he takes care of as a pet and tells him that he is lucky. Then Sylvie rushed to Arthur and climbed on his shoulder to feel safe, while the old man felt angry that he couldn't get him before he arrived. When Arthur started to leave, Sebastian told him to give him Sylvie, as he has been looking for a mana monster to be his partner for a long time. He added that he could use Sylvie's full potential to his advantage and attacked him without warning, but Arthur didn't move, so Sebastian told him he was making him an offer he couldn't refuse. Arthur wondered what would happen if he refused to give him Sylvie, so he used his wand to surprise him with fire magic again. He decided to ignore it and move on, but the old man warned him that his family would be held responsible for his disobedience to the royal family, and that's when Arthur emitted a terrifying aura that made the old man almost wet his pants. King Gladiar, realizing that someone was madly bloodthirsty, ordered his guards to protect the people inside the house while he searched for the owner of the aura. Arthur realized that he had inadvertently caused the commotion by losing control of himself. Reynold decided to start evacuating the place. After the situation had calmed down, Gladiar scolded Reynold for failing to catch the culprit and decided to take disciplinary action against him. Sebastian suggested that he should be pardoned since no harm had been done. He then turned his attention to Arthur and told him that he could take care of Sylvie in a suitable environment, as if to indirectly bargain with him. Then Arthur realized that he had gotten the king's support to let him take Sylvie as a reward for his efforts with him. Just as he was about to object, Reynold apologized to Gladiar and told him that he had no right to ask Arthur to give up Sylvie because he had obtained it himself without anyone's help. When Gladiar wanted to know his opinion, Arthur turned to him and, having been sufficiently reprimanded by the guards for staring at his superior, which is against the etiquette of talking to nobles, he lowered his head and apologized for his refusal to give Sylvie to Sebastian. Everyone was surprised that he had the audacity to refuse a request from the king, while Gladiar suggested giving him the cup he bought at the auction in exchange for Sylvie and tried to convince him that reptiles like Sylvie take a long time to grow compared to other rare beasts. But Arthur told him that he had no intention of giving up or selling his animal. Gladiar was furious that his request was denied for the second time in a row, and when he asked him for the third time, Arthur was curious to ask him if there was anything that would make him give up one of his children. When the king remained silent, he accused him of being too proud to accept his refusal to give up his pet. Sebastian then ordered the guards to attack him and teach him a harsh lesson in front of everyone, but he kicked their asses effortlessly, which made Sebastian furious and vowed to get what he wanted at any cost. And we Travava! Arthur used his wand to attack him, and then Arthur used his power to control and stop time to get alone with Sebastian and beat the crap out of him while those around them took no damage, then stared him straight in the face and told him that his spells wouldn't work against him. Sebastian shuddered and told him not to come near him, but Arthur broke his legs in a split second and he ended up on the ground. No matter how loudly he screamed, no one could help him, so Arthur sat next to him and told him no one would hear him. Sebastian tells him that he won't get away with it after messing with the royal family, but he quickly pisses his pants when he sees the dragon that appears out of nowhere behind Arthur and gives him a deadly look, so he begs him to forgive him. Arthur negates his power and everything is back to normal, but soon he loses consciousness after draining all his energy. In the evening, Arthur regained consciousness and realized that he had overused his powers as he still needed to practice more. Then he found his mother entering the room, and when he asked her what happened after he lost consciousness, she told him that they were worried about him, but the doctor told him that he would wake up soon, and when he saw her wiping her tears before they fell, he felt ashamed that he had caused her concern again. The next day, he decided to go shopping with her to help him feel better, and they bought some accessories for Eleanor. When she asked him if there was anything he wanted to buy, he told her that everything here was too expensive, and he was worried that his father would lose his job because of him. She told him not to worry, she had her own business, and Arthur discovered that she made household items such as forks, spoons, and plates, and that her products were very popular with the nobility. When he returned home, he found his father arguing with a guest, and it turned out that King Gladiar had sent an emissary to apologize on his behalf for what happened yesterday and to give them a huge amount of money. Arthur realizes that the king is trying to play the humble victim, while the commissioner tells him that the guards who attacked him have been fired. Reynold continues on about how his son almost died, but the commissioner tells him that his son was the one who challenged the king in the first place. In addition to failing his security mission beforehand, Arthur decides to let it go before his father is also expelled. When he asks about Shin, the commissioner tells him that he was relieved of his post and sent for treatment, and that he accused him of assaulting him when he woke up. No one believed it because they were in a different time dimension, and it turned out that from their point of view, the guards who attacked Arthur had accidentally deflected their power towards him and injured him, so the king decided to make an offer of peace to them because of this disgraceful incident. He then advised Reynold to start teaching Arthur good behavior, as not all nobles are as tolerant as Gladiar, so Reynold had to accept his apology and give the money to Arthur to benefit from it. In the evening, Arthur felt angry that he was still a child in this world after all the events he had gone through and the strength he had gained, and the next day Arthur went to the Magic Institute and continued to contemplate everything around him until his eyes fell on a bird with a distinctive Arjun, Idae Senda, Idae shape that stood in front of him before flying away. Arthur decides to follow it until he reaches the forest, where he notices an old lady who looks like a witch and tells him that she has been waiting for him. Arthur realizes that the old woman waiting for him is actually the headmistress of the prestigious Zero's Academy, where he will be attending while the headmistress decides to test his power to see if Vincent is right about him. Arthur senses a tremendous amount of power emanating from her, yet he decides to use everything he has to prove to her that Vincent is right. When he attacks her, she easily blocks him, and he realizes that he's not getting much results from his wind magic, so he decided to use fire magic against her, but to no avail. So he tried to get a little closer to her, then he was surprised that she used a wind protection wall to prevent him from reaching her until he ended up on the ground. Then she warned him not to pass out after her next attack. Arthur was shocked to see her use the element of sound, which made him feel a fatal headache and could not bear the repeated squeaks. After a while, the headmistress stopped and told him that he had passed her test and that she wanted to teach him herself. Then she asked him if there was anything he wanted to tell her after coming all this way to show her his power. He realized she was smart and told her that he wanted to gain the power and authority she had and use it to protect his family and would join the academy if she agreed to share it with him. The headmistress was surprised by his candor and boldness and told him that no one in the royal family had ever tried to negotiate with her in this way before and felt that he had great self-confidence. When he told her that he wanted to join the academy 3 years from now, she noticed that he was hesitant. When she asked him why, he told her that he wanted to become an adventurer and explore the world around him, and then it would be time for him to join the Magic Academy. She told him that they would make their agreement after he succeeded in convincing his parents of his desire. When Arthur told his parents that he wanted to become an adventurer, Alice vehemently refused since he had just returned home and there was no need to involve him in risky hard work, while Reynolds suggested that Arthur take an escort to protect him, but that wasn't enough to change Alice's mind. Arthur intervened and told him that he didn't intend to leave immediately, that he wouldn't be away from home much and would be able to return every few months, and expressed his desire to explore the world around him, to learn more, and to know what it felt like when they were adventurous in the far past. Alice was curious to know more about the hidden skills he had acquired while away from them. Arthur wished he could tell them everything, but he didn't want to put them in danger. Reynolds told him that it was normal for his mother to worry about him, and added that he wanted to send someone they trusted with him on his travels. Adam refuses to take care of him because he doesn't like babysitting, and he can't stop imagining that he will be assassinated in his sleep for some reason, and the others scold him for his rudeness. Reynolds tries to convince them to agree, telling them that he has nothing to offer them in return, but he will do everything he can to repay them, and Jasmine agrees to take care of him to everyone's amazement because she prefers to isolate and work alone, but she tells him that she will do it for Arthur. So, no one minds Jasmine taking care of him because she is strong enough to protect him and train him. In the evening, they found Lilia practicing meditation on her own, and Arthur felt that she had gained enough strength to go through the training without him. He thought that his sister would be able to awaken her powers in a few years and wished that she would not awaken her powers at such a young age. He then asked his parents to let him go to the auction house to get a sword. He then went to Vincent and told him that he wanted a sword to use during the entrance ceremony of the Magic Academy, and he realized that he had made up his mind about becoming an adventurer and let him choose any sword he wanted. Sometime later, Alice became concerned when Arthur was late getting home, and Reynolds told her that they should be patient as Arthur seemed serious about his decision. On the other hand, Arthur was irritated that he was in the middle of a large group of swords and none of them interested him. The break. He thought that perhaps because soldiers in this world are augmented, they are sold standard swords without any special features. He kept looking for a sword that he could use with his build until Sophie found a mace lying around, but when he picked it up, he felt that it looked more like a sword than a mace. Then he thought that he might need to use a certain element of magic to swing it, and when he put his power into it, he was surprised that he was able to pull it out of its sheath, but it looked quite impressive for a sword. In addition to its weight, he wanted to test it to cut something and managed to cut an empty barrel in half. Then he noticed inscriptions on the blade that he could not read, and suddenly he was struck by a shock that forced him to drop the sword. sword. When he picked it up again, he found that the weight and balance of the weapon had changed and he could use it smoothly. Arthur decided to acquire the sword after finding it to be very perfect for him, even more than the swords he had used in his previous life. Then he found his father came to take him home after he was late returning, so he decided to hide the special sword and pretended to take another traditional sword. Vincent noticed the mace around his waist and told them that he intended to use it in training after he found it by chance and saw that its weight was suitable for his body. One of the employees at the home remembered that an old man had brought it and threw it in his face while shouting that no one was qualified to use it. He told them that he liked the mace and wanted to keep it if possible, and Vincent did not mind the matter, as it was just a useless mace for him that only collected dust around it. And after he succeeded in obtaining his secret weapon, he began to enjoy his time with his family by living a quiet life among everyone, although he did not forget his desire to become an adventurer and was devoted to practicing well. A few months later, everyone celebrated Arthur's 9th birthday with a big feast, and Arthur enjoyed his time with them. In the evening, they gave him many gifts, including a set of stones from Alice, which she put some healing magic inside for him. Vincent gave them a pair of rings and told Alice that her ring would light up if Arthur's mana level dropped, and Adam gave him a manuscript in which mana was used to leave a message. Arthur expressed his gratitude to everyone and promised to do his best not to cause them trouble in his work, and Alice asked him to be careful and return to her safely. And after the party ended, Arthur sat in his room preparing his things to start his journey as an adventurer tomorrow, thinking that he has family and friends who love him in this world and does not want to lose the sense of security that they give him, and he swore to do his best to become even stronger than he was before when he was a king. After that, he went out of the room and found his family waiting for him, so he said goodbye to them and took Sylvie with him. And when he came out of the house, he found Jasmine waiting for him to start his first journey with her as an adventurer. Arthur and Jasmine went to the Adventurers Guild in Zeros to officially register him as an adventurer. Arthur wore a mask that completely hid his facial features so that the royal family would not target his family, while Jasmine submitted an application to register him with the guild and evaluate his abilities. Arthur was then taken to a separate room where the head of the guild's branch, Casbin, told them that he would be administering a written test to Arthur and confirming his mana core. He then approached Jasmine and whispered that her father had visited the guild 2 days ago. He then turned to Arthur and asked how he liked to be called, since the test didn't require him to reveal his true identity. After they shook hands, Arthur realized that he was strong enough to become the head of the guild. On their way, Arthur wondered if Jasmine knew him, and she told him that her father had a close relationship with the guild. When they arrived at the hall, Arthur found that it was a battlefield where adventurers and mages were tested through dueling. Arthur sat and watched as the applicants were evaluated until a boy named Elijah appeared on the stage, and to everyone's surprise, he was declared a B-rank adventurer without taking a test. Then it was the turn of an adventurer named Lucas, who sarcastically wondered if he could pass the test and get an A rating, but ended up standing in front of the evaluator on the battlefield. Arthur realizes that Lucas belongs to the elves through his ears. When his test begins, Lucas uses his brute strength to show off for everyone, but he ends up losing control of his powers and almost causes chaos if the teacher doesn't intervene in time. Before the teacher could finish her evaluation, he was furious with her and launched a surprise attack on her, but Arthur intervened, throwing his sword between them to block his fiery attack. He was furious and told them that the test didn't count because someone else interfered. The roster bearer told him that his attempt to attack the teacher was unacceptable and that the test was already over. The teacher decided to keep him at rank B and kicked him out, and then it was Arthur's turn to test his abilities. As he stood in the testing area, the roster holder asked him if he had come to take the test under special circumstances, as his file contained no information, and when he looked up, he was horrified at the sight of his aura. He found Casbin ordering him to step aside after deciding to test his abilities himself, while Arthur realized that the test would not be easy, as Casbin is an AA-rated magician, and neither of them hesitated to start attacking each other at the start of the fight. Afterward, Arthur ended up getting a B rank as an adventurer and got his ID card. On the other hand, the members of the evaluation committee were not understanding Casbin's decision to give him a B rank right away, even though he is a new adventurer. He told them what happened 6 months ago at the triracial meeting, where the ban on recognizing dwarf and elf adventurers was lifted, and added that Lucas is half-elf, lives on Sabine, and his mother is likely to be an enslaved elf. They questioned Elijah about his family's suspicious methods of producing magical children, and he replied that he has someone who guarantees his ability and at the same time is someone who can't refuse him. He also doubts that Elijah is the human child raised in the dwarf kingdom by dwarves, as is rumored. Concerned about what will happen next after the guild registers additional adventurers, including an unknown Arthur, Casbin tells them that although little is known about him, he is confident that he is not an emissary of the elves or dwarves, and that his power is intriguing at the same time. Then he recalled what he had noticed during their fight, that his movements were confused due to his continued growth, but he is good with a sword, and predicted that he will have a terrifying power after he is fully grown in the future. Meanwhile, Jasmine noticed Arthur's absent-mindedness while thinking that his fight against Casbin made him realize that he has become too accustomed to this world and has become more acclimated to his power. He then encountered Elijah, who told him that he had been reckless in his efforts to stop Lucas's attack, though he would have done the same thing in his place. As he spoke, Lucas interrupted by asking if they knew each other or if they were having a a B-rank meeting. Arthur sarcastically tells him that they wouldn't want to invite a rule breaker like him. Lucas advises him not to get too cocky and then approaches him and grabs his collar to tell him that even within the same rank, there are levels above each other. While they were in the middle of a fight, they noticed that everyone was staring at them, not realizing that they were just kids, so Lucas had to leave him alone after realizing that they were drawing attention and vowing not to let him do it again. Arthur and Jasmine then went to a place known as the Monster Pasture. She told him that this area had been fully explored and that low-ranking people used to come here to train and gather the resources they needed for their missions. Then she decided to take him to a certain area that would take a whole day to travel to, so he had no choice but to follow her. On their way, they were surprised by a loud explosion near them, and soon a huge wild boar appeared in front of the adventurers and started attacking and devouring them. Jasmine thought that they should run away quickly and told Arthur that this monster didn't belong in the Monster Pasture, but they soon found it following them, and when it rushed towards them, they tried to avoid it as much as possible, and Arthur started to use his weapon, but Jasmine told him to run away. She rushes towards the boar to face it alone and manages to damage it, but she almost loses her balance and falls prey to it. Arthur intervenes and saves her just in time, and once they are away from him, he begins to focus on the other adventurers. Jasmine jumped towards them to protect them. Before Arthur could move, he saw his own version of the king in his past life telling him to wait for the right time before attacking him. As the boar rushed towards Jasmine, he used his power to plunge his fiery sword into the monster's body and then tore it apart, ending up dead. In the evening, Jasmine scolds him, removes his mask, pinches him, and tells him that he should be a little nervous in situations like this. Arthur is confused and thinks about what he's done wrong. She then sat down to tell him her story, that she was born into a family who were all talented in using magic, especially fire magic, and her parents had high hopes for her as she was able to awaken her power earlier than her siblings, but she ended up being called a failure by them after she couldn't use fire magic like them. Arthur got angry and told her that it's not about the type of magic and that the only thing that determines the power of a magician is his ability to use his power. Jasmine laughed when she saw him so emotional, and he realized that the reason for his emotion was that what she said reminded him of his previous life where he was also labeled as a failure. Jasmine then told him that she had been reprimanded by her squad in the past when she fought in the same way as him, but at that time she didn't understand how to cooperate with others or trust them, but they taught her and changed her for the better. Arthur sat alone after she fell asleep and wondered if he could change like her. Remembering everything he had been through since he came to this world, he decided to make an effort to change and trust himself so that he could protect his family and friends. Meanwhile, Tessia was watching him through her crystal and was so angry when she saw him traveling with another woman that she almost broke the crystal. Then she was surprised to find Farion standing behind her, and when he grabbed the crystal, he advised her to start doing something new if she was jealous of Arthur's new challenge in his life. Then he gave her one of his books, and she realized what she had to do.